Hello, listener, or possibly listeners. This is Andrew Michael Tarr, and you are listening and maybe even watching episode 0004 of the Content Creator Podcast. I'm Andrew Michael Tarr, and with me today, to my right, probably on your screen, is Everett Young, a musician, filmmaker, content creator of many kinds who I have known for a long time. That's what you do when you start a podcast. Your first interview has to be somebody you know who's not going to give you, well, actually might give you a whole bunch of crap, but it's okay because we've known each other since college. But that is not the only reason that Everett is on the podcast. He is a content creator. He is, and this is something I would never say if I wasn't introducing him on my podcast, but he is the most incredible musician I know. He is even better than me. I can't believe I am saying that while being recorded. But yeah, no, he's amazing as a producer, as a songwriter. But what he is doing mostly these days is composing scores for films. And that is why he is here today, because we are going to discuss scoring film. And even those of you who are creating content where you feel like you can't have someone actually score your short film or your video project, whatever it may be, and you're using library music from one of the various places online that you can get just some regular music, we're also going to talk about maybe some guidance to at least make your project suck a little less, even though you don't have a composer scoring for you. Hello, Everett. How are you?
Hello, Andrew. I just want your listeners to know that don't believe what he just said about me. I'm a much better musician than what he said I was. So
Yeah, true. Everett's the guy who I call when I can't remember a song I wrote 10 years ago. I will say, what are the chords for that
10,
thing?
10, more than 10.
Even more than 10 years since I have written some song that I can't remember the chords to. I will call Everett. We all want to be younger. I don't know anybody who wants to be older except my kids, and that's not going to last more than a couple more years. Then they're going to want to be younger. Nobody's like, I love being this exact age, except maybe 22-year-olds. But the cool thing is that it used to be that you really couldn't be taken seriously as a content creator unless you were 22 or already famous. Like if you were in your 30s or 40s or 50s, there was nothing you could do to create content because there was no avenue for it. At least now we have the internet and podcasts and all of this stuff that I'm getting busy with now after maybe too many years. But how did I do on the bio, Everett? I'm sure I left some stuff out or said some stuff that was to the left or right of.
The part of my bio that's relevant is I am scoring films now. I got into it about 7 years ago. I was ready to walk away from music as a serious career choice. I had run a studio. I'd been a mastering engineer. I had made several solo albums as a singer-songwriter. I'd produced bands, nobody famous. And I thought, well, maybe I'm done with being serious about me. I taught myself guitar, and I was playing guitar in a band. And I thought, well, maybe I'm done working so hard at this, and I'll just make music a hobby. That was my thought. I was going to make music a hobby. And so I thought, before I sort of hang it up, or hang it up, at least the dream of being a professional musician, there's one thing I've always wanted to really understand. One thing I've always wanted to know. I would like to know how my hero, John Williams, creates the amazing harmonic content that he creates. So I thought, I wonder who could teach me that. Fast forward, no one can, but I couldn't find a place to learn it. Maybe Juilliard, but I'm not going to apply to Juilliard at my age and start there. And I would never be able to get into Juilliard. So, but the common man can't find out how to write like John Williams. I guess if the common man could find that out, more of us would write like John. But I say John like I know him. I don't. But
Yeah.
but
That's what you do. You're like, oh yeah,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
Bobby De
Johnny.
Niro was just saying the other day that, you know.
So what I did, so in hopes that that someone could teach me this magic that John Williams creates, in hopes that someone could teach me that, I decided to try taking some online film scoring classes. Berkeley offers these online film scoring classes. This must have been 6 to 7 years ago. And I found out that I was pretty good at scoring a scene. I could orchestrate. And I bought some sampling libraries to score with, and I was pretty good at it. So after taking a couple courses, I thought, well, let me score a couple student films. And I contacted several film schools, and all of them pretty much just said get lost, except for Syracuse. And Syracuse put my name out to their students, and a couple of them called me. So I scored some Syracuse student films, and then I scored some short films that weren't student films. And I answered an ad on Mandy. You know what Mandy is, right? It's a resource for people in the film industry to find crew, find composers, find editors, find camera people, possibly writers and actors. Even it's just a site for, it's like a want ads for the film industry.
To me, that's a perfect example of like what's going on now that wasn't going on when we were younger. The internet, besides being a place that you can make art that and actually get it to people that you used to not be able to do, there are all these tools that exist now for connecting with other people, doing stuff like reaching out to colleges or students who are making student films. There's so many different ways. It used to be that, like, to create art, whatever your art was, you either had to like somehow get in early as a career path, and there were certain career paths, or it had to just be a hobby, and there wasn't really any in between. And
That's right.
now it feels like there's more in between than those two things, which
Well,
is
you could argue I'm in between, because I don't make a lot of money doing this. I make a little bit of money doing it, not a living. I still have to have a day job. But yeah, Mandy allowed me to work on professional films. They're low budget, but professionally made films. It's real film scoring. It's not writing some music to your little home video you made. It's the real thing.
yeah.
So I applied for a feature film. Most of the time when you respond to a Mandy ad, you never hear back from them. But I heard back from the director. They wanted someone with feature film experience, and I didn't have that. So I said, "Hey, I'm good anyway. You should give me a listen." And he listened to my stuff, and he said, "Yeah, you are good. I'm not sure I can sell you to the producers." I was talking to the director, and he had me score a scene for him, and I did the best job I could. Man, I poured my heart into that scene, and I think I did a fantastic job. I sent it to him. I waited a week. I waited 2 weeks, and I didn't get the job. And I was absolutely brokenhearted. And I had the idea that what had possibly cost me that job was that I didn't have feature film experience. So I determined
Yeah.
that was never going to happen again. And I became determined to land on a feature film, and it wasn't more than a few weeks, maybe a couple months before I was on a feature-length documentary called The Day I Met Hitler. I scored it. It won Best Documentary at Toronto International Film Festival. It's a really nice documentary, though. It's really good, by a filmmaker named Ronan Israelsky. He tracks down people who, as small children, came face to face with Adolf Hitler, and interviews them about how that experience changed their lives. And it's everyone from Jews who lost family members in the Holocaust all the way to an unrepentant Nazi that he confronts on the street.
Wow.
And it was a really neat experience getting to score that film. Well, I had a feature film under my belt then, and boy, did that ever make it easier to get on other films. So I'm now working on my sixth feature film. We're now flash forward 3 years later, and I'm working on my sixth feature, and I'm attached to numbers 7 and 8.
I think that's something that's always existed, is like And it's in everything. It's like whatever the thing that you want to do is, the people who would hire you to do that want you to have already done it.
You got to find your first experience somehow, and you'll be able to do it. But
so what do you think the trick is to get somebody to let you do the first thing that really you should have already done to be able to do that thing? How do you break that catch-22?
Yeah, there's as many different avenues in as there are composers. I think so my avenue was, I found Ronan raising money on one of the crowdfunding sites, for his film, and I gave some money to support his film, and not a lot. I gave $10-$20. It looked like a really great film, something I'd love to be involved in. And after I gave him money, I reached out to him and said, "Hey, your film looks great. I've supported you. Do you have a composer?" He says, "No, he doesn't have a composer." So I said, "Well, would you listen to some of my stuff?" He listened to it. He really liked it. He said, "Oh, your music sounds really psychological. It sounds really, you'd be good for this project, but I don't have any money to pay you." And I said, "Well, okay, well, let's talk again in a few weeks." So Ronan was actually going around to synagogues around the United States and Canada, and he was putting on a presentation and getting donations from the synagogues to raise money for his film.
Wow.
And I called him. I guess I wrote him back and said, "How's things going with the film?" He said, "Great, I would love to work with you, but I can't pay you." And I said, "Well, what if I wrote some music for the presentations that you're putting on at these synagogues, and you could incorporate some music into your presentations, and I would do that. That would be a donation of mine to help you make the film." And he was bowled over with my generosity, which is amazing because I thought it was pretty obvious that I was a composer trying to get my grubby hands on his project so that I could make a name for myself. Right. But he thought I was being really generous. But I did really believe in the film, and so I wrote. He told me what kind of music he wanted. He wanted something with solo violin, with a sad sort of Schindler's List type sound, and so I wrote a piece of music that became the theme to the film. And then when he had the film made, the job was, there was no question that he was going to look for a composer. He had his composer. So I found my way into that job in a very unique way, contacting him first and then going a few weeks without talking and come back and recontacting him and then scoring his fundraising materials. That might be a way that you would get on something, but there's a million ways to get on a film. There's a lot of different ways to meet filmmakers. You could go to film festivals. You can find them on IMDb. You can find them on the crowdfunding sites. A lot of lower budget films are funded that way.
And you'll never really know what would have happened if you hadn't done that donation. I'm going to write some music for your fundraising videos. But there is something about doing something for the person that you're wanting to work with. It's a little bit like when I go to Costco and they give me a little sample of something. They're not giving me a box of cookies for free, but they're giving me a cookie. Then I'm like, and then half the time I just buy the box of cookies, and I probably wouldn't have bought it. And let's be honest, it's a good cookie. It's not an amazing cookie, but it was good enough that I thought, I'll eat these. And it's human nature. Somebody does something little for you, it's like, it helps. So, and I don't know that there's always a way to do that. I want to work with this person. Is there something I can do for free or to help them that will make them more likely to use me? But
there's a huge debate in the composer community about whether composers who are in the early stages of their career should donate their work. And some composers think that it's a horrible thing to do. And some composers think that it's entirely appropriate to donate or work for very low rates early in your career. I happen to think it would be almost impossible to get off the ground without doing that.
But here's the thing that's different. You didn't score a feature for free. You said, I want to work on your feature. I want to score your feature. And I'm not going to do it for free, but I will do this. I'll give you some music. I'll score this little thing that you're using going around to the synagogues to raise money.
Sometimes I get paid, and sometimes the director or the producer intends to pay me, and I don't know whether money is going to come through. And there are certainly there's no shortage of composers out there who would be very critical of me for being willing to work speculatively like that, and be willing to put in lots and lots of work on a feature film, thinking maybe I'll get paid, maybe I won't. But at the low budget end, getting paid isn't going to change your life anyway. I don't look at it as how much am I getting paid. I look at it as, and I think this is a good way to look at it, but you don't have to. We're all on a team together.
Yeah.
This is a team of filmmakers. The DP is trying to advance their career. The composer is trying to advance their career. The director is trying to advance their career. All the actors are trying to advance their careers. Where most of us are probably getting paid, but not anything like a living. We're on a team, and we're trying to move our careers forward, and the payment is that we all get to be proud of this thing we made. So if you don't think of it as being on a team, if you look at it as that's the boss and I'm getting hired, then yeah, you might say, well, no, I'm not working for less than $75 for every hour of my time. And if you've never scored a feature, or if you've only scored 2 or 3 small features, and you're saying, well, I don't do a film for less than $15,000, good luck. It's going to be real hard for you to get one.
But it might be less hard for you to get one if you do one for a lot less, and the film does well in some way, or even just is a good film that you now have something you can send somebody and say, I scored this, and you have a couple of really powerful scenes where the music really drives the action. And
I think it's smart early in your career not to chase money too hard. That's what I would say. But I feel like for aspiring film composers, that is an issue we think about a lot. How much do I charge early on in my career? When do I start to say, hey, I got to make money now? I got to really make some serious money. When do we start to do that?
Yeah.
I
think that's a question that all artists and that goes even long way into the past, before there was an internet, before there were content creators. That's a question artists have always asked. I have this thing that I love to do that I'm good at. How do I put a value on that? And how do I get people to pay me to do it? They're getting value from it. Even if it's, some street performer or a painter, I put some paint on this canvas. The canvas cost me, $200, and I spent $75 in paint. And then how many hours did I spend? You start doing these calculations but what it comes down to is the art itself has value, but how a lot of what drives how much I can sell my painting for is how many other people have bought my paintings and what they've paid for them. There's like the money thing has been a weird measure all along for all kinds of art.
One thing you will hear said sometimes, and I don't think I agree with this, is you'll hear it said, well, if you don't place a pretty high price on your art, then the people that you're working with will not value your art. And I just don't. I've never felt undervalued, even when I knew I was being underpaid. I've never felt undervalued, because I've never felt like if only I had priced myself basically out of their ability to afford me, they would have respected me more. I've never felt that.
I think that's right, because everybody's in the same boat. And they all know they like to be making more money doing what they're doing, and they know that they bring value.
We might be making a film, and the whole budget is $60,000-$70,000. We all wish that the budget were $6-7 million, or 60 or 70 million. Everybody wants. Everyone's trying to go to the same place. We're all in the same boat. No one's disrespecting anyone else because I don't disrespect the DP because the DP is not demanding, $2,000 a day.
Right. Let me ask you a question. If you were making a feature, micro budget feature now, and you had $1,000 that you could spend on hiring a composer, but you're going to hire a composer who's willing to score an entire feature film for $1,000.
Do the best they can. They are excited to be on this project. They don't care about the pay. Yep.
Would you try to find a composer who could do it for $1,000, or would you use library music?
Composer. Yeah,
Okay.
no doubt.
Okay. Let's
I
ratchet it down a
I
little
can
bit.
think off the top of my head. I can think off the top of my head of 5 or 6 composers that are friends of mine who would probably be able to do it for $1,000. Probably be able to have enough time without off of work or whatever, and they would. And I'm not just talking about myself.
Yeah.
5 or 6
Sure.
other than me who would blow away anything you could get from a music library. Yes, absolutely.
So now let's go farther down the totem pole. You're doing a short film. You don't have $1,000. Yeah, you have a budget of $1,000 for the entire film, which includes getting props and costumes and feeding the people on the set, and you basically have no money for music. You have not allotted any money for music. You maybe have $50.
Yep.
Would you try to find a composer,
10, 12-minute film,
willing, who's willing to work for free? But you might get somebody who doesn't know what they're doing because they're willing to work for free to score a short film.
Or would you? I would still get a composer. I would at least try a composer before I went with a music library. Absolutely.
And how would you go about finding? What's your advice to filmmakers or content creators who want to find a composer but don't know where to begin to find somebody, and maybe they don't know enough about music to even know how to find and hire a composer?
There's loads of Facebook groups. There's composer Facebook groups. There's filmmaker Facebook groups where filmmakers meet each other, and there's composers on the filmmaker Facebook groups who are looking to find projects to score. If you live in a town with a music school, there's probably composition majors who would jump at the chance. There's Mandy ads. I see Mandy ads all the time for a composer, and the payment is $0. I don't answer zero pay ads anymore. I don't know if I ever have answered a zero pay ad. The reason I don't answer a zero pay ad, by the way, is not because I care about the payment. The reason I don't answer a zero pay ad is because I think it's a signal for maybe the film not being. I'm afraid the film might not look good.
Yeah.
Now that I'm being prejudiced, it might be good film. It might be, and maybe I'm missing out on some really good projects. But you can't, to research even on just looking on the internet to figure out whether a film is a film that you want to sink an hour of your time into going after the job when you might not even get it. You need to figure out pretty quickly whether you think it's a serious enough project for it to be worth your time.
Yeah. And the same is true on the other side, right? Because the filmmaker who has no budget and wants to find a composer, but they know they're dealing with a composer who's at a point in their career where they're willing to work on their short film for no money. There's a risk that, what I'm going to get from this guy is not going to sound pro. It's not going to sound musically professional, sonically. Like when I go to this music library, everything sounds really clean and slick, and it's EQ'd properly, and it sounds sort of, to my non-musician ears, it sounds more correct musically than what I might be able to find a composer who would work for free. So
what was that? That strange graphic that I just saw. I just saw some.
I don't know. This thing just gave me a graphic when I did this. It was confetti. Maybe this software thought I was celebrating. Yeah. What other types of stuff is it going to put on the screen if I do what if I do devil horns? I didn't add that confetti.
I don't know. Is that? I thought maybe it was the.
I'm recording this on Riverside, which is a podcasting software that just threw a bunch of confetti at me.
Is it telling you that you're running out of time?
I think it's just looking at the length of my previous episodes. We've been talking for 30 minutes, but I'm going to cut this down to less than that because I'm going to take out the part where the naked women came in and started dancing in front of the camera. That happens to me all the time, but it's not appropriate. So I'm going to take that out, and some of the other stuff is going to come out of this podcast when I edit it before I post it.
Where were we?
We were talking about the risk on both sides. The the
Oh,
composer who is willing
well,
to
I
work
mean,
for free has to ask themselves, is this film going to be, this guy has no money, is he going to be able to make something that looks good? The filmmaker is saying, this guy's willing to work for no money, is he going to be able to give me something that's going to sound more professional
well, you
than the
don't have to
music I
worry
would pull
about
off of a
that.
library?
If you're a filmmaker, you don't have to worry about that, because you're going to get lots and lots of composers coming out of the woodwork. You put an ad on Mandy, even if it says no pay, you're going to get a lot of people who are just looking for something to put their music on. You're going to get a lot of people who will submit to that, and you'll be able to listen to their music and see if you like it. Now,
Yeah.
a
Okay.
lot of it's going to sound kind of like generic. It's going to sound kind of like generic library music, but you might find someone special.
And here's the thing that a lot of filmmakers starting out don't understand. They think, well, music is music. I need music under my scene. It either has to be music with tension or drama or fast paced because they're running around, or it's got to be slow because it's a love thing. But what they don't understand is that music with some sort of general tone will never bring your scene to life the way that an actual score that was written around the scene will, because there are moments in the scene. It's one thing to have sort of a love theme that's sort of dramatic, and the couple's looking at each other and they're saying, "Oh, I love you," as opposed to a theme that builds as the tension builds, and there's like some instrument that comes in right at that moment when they're connecting or whatever. Even if you don't have a John Williams or an Everett Young scoring
That's
your
right.
film,
That's right.
you're
You better
gonna,
say it.
just the fact that you've got somebody who has said, I am a composer who scores films, you're gonna get something that's gonna support your scene and bring it someplace in a way that you can't make happen with library music.
Yeah, you want someone who will find what's great about that scene, about that moment in that scene, and shine a light on that. And there's no way library music can do it. Um, I would rather use a just okay composer than library music. And beware, because library music can sound maybe better from just a pure sonic point of view than what a composer would create, because the composer is pouring his energy or her energy into creating a good piece of music rather than the most spectacular
Yeah.
orgasmic ear candy that they possibly
Yeah.
can,
But
which
the
is what
thing is that ear candy might be impressive when you play a scene for, oh,
that's
listen
right.
to this music I have in this scene, but it's not going to make the scene itself better.
You ever go to the music store and you're testing out the keyboards in the music store, and
Yeah.
you're going through this different sounds, and every sound is like, oh my god, that's so amazing, that's so amazing, that's so amazing.
There's always some sound where like, oh, listen to this. It's like UFO sound. It's like there's like strings and
Right.
trumpets, and then there's like whoa, 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 whoa. Oh, that sounds amazing, and it's going left and right.
You buy the keyboard, and 4 years later, you've never used that sound in a song.
Yeah, when are you going to use
There's
that
no
sound
way
in a
you could
song?
use that
But
sound in a
that
song.
sound is only there to sell you the keyboard.
I mean, library music is probably fine for, like, if you're on a tight production schedule and you've got some sort of like reality show on TV or whatever. I'm sure music, like, and you've got to score 30 minutes a week of some reality show, then yeah, you're going to use library music. That's just what you're going to do, and it works
Or on the
fine.
other side, you're doing a YouTube video. It's like a 3-minute YouTube video, and you're just it's
Right. I
not.
know an animator. He's got some really neat stuff he does. I scored an animated short for him 4 years ago. Actually, gave a talk at the Tallahassee filmmaker meeting with him just last night. He showed the short that we did together, and he uses library music now to do, because he has a YouTube channel. He's doing really great with it. He's got 180,000 subscribers, and he uses library music to score what are mostly 20 to 30-second shorts. He does little 20 to 30-second animated
Wow.
shorts. Yeah, so you're not going to
Yeah.
go hire a composer to do that, of course.
So there's a place for library music,
For
but
a
if you,
scene, for a
yeah.
narrative, for a scene, yes, you should hire a composer, and there are plenty of quality composers.
Before we end for today, I would like you to just give a little plug to the films that you've scored, and maybe just tell the people what the film is, where they might be able to see it, and maybe a little blurb to plug.
So the first one I scored is The Day I Met Hitler, and it's a documentary by Ronan Israelsky. And I'm sure that if you Google it, you'll find it, and I'm sure you'll be able to stream it or download it. And it's a really good documentary. The next film I scored is a holiday romantic comedy called Christmas at the Ranch. It's one of 3. I'm working on my 4th right now. Films that I've done for director Kristen Baker. Kristen is a wonderful director who makes films targeted at the LGBTQ community. She has this really neat concept for her films where most of her characters are lesbians, and she puts them in an imaginary world where their being gay is not an issue. Like she populates her films with characters who are non-judgmental, who don't care, and she allows her characters to live lives where that doesn't become an issue for them. So Christmas at the Ranch, and then a year later we did Merry and Gay, another Christmas time romantic comedy. So I've done those 2 romantic comedies for Kristen. I feel really lucky to have met her. And then we've done what was sort of a horror movie. She's doing a series of horror films that she's calling Scare B&B. The first one is Scare B&B, The Host. And the other one that I'm working on right now, it's not out yet, is Scare B&B Double Booking. They're not like gruesome horror movies. They're more sort of comedy horror, or sort of there's usually a love story element to the movie. So I'm right now working on my 4th Kristen Baker film, and Kristen is just a delight to work with, and her films are, I think, really delightful, including the horror movies. And then earlier this year, my latest film came out, Craving, a pretty brutal horror movie by Jay Horton. And you and I both know Jason, and he's a really talented filmmaker. And Jason had a really great cast for Craving. Having a great cast sure does make my job a lot easier. And I have a couple of other films that I'm attached to for the future, but I can't talk about them. I'm not allowed to talk about them, but maybe you'll have me back on and I'll talk about them.
I probably will have you back on. Just don't piss me off, and you're invited back on. Everett Young, thank you for being here on the Content Creator Podcast. This is the very first interview episode I've done, and we're doing the video thing too, so people can watch. I'm going to put some of that stuff in the show notes at thecontentcreatorpodcast.com. We're working on getting that site up.
Nothing would make me happier than for some other artists that I've worked with to get a few extra views because I was on this podcast. That'd be really neat.
Well, we will make that happen. Thank you, everybody. I'm Andrew Michael Tarr. I'll see you next time.